Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jacqueline Wyndham. I am one of your eCW trainers. Today, we will be reviewing telephone encounters. First, we will review how to create a telephone encounter as well as how to respond. Also, we will learn how to refill a prescription via telephone encounter. And then we will also learn how to manage our telephone encounters. First of all, please be aware that telephone encounters are documented in a patient's chart. They should be utilized not only for telephone encounters, but also for any documentation needed in a patient's chart where a full progress note is not required. Getting started, there are two ways to create a telephone encounter. The first way would be to use your T jelly bean. First, you would click on your T beside your T jelly bean and choose New Telephone Encounter. This will bring up the telephone encounter screen. From here, you would select your patient by clicking on the SEL button above the patient area, and you would search for your patient there and continue. Another way of creating a telephone encounter is from the patient's hub. In order to do so, you would utilize your patient lookup button or Sherlock Holmes. You would search for your patient, which today we're going to utilize a test patient. And once we click OK, this will bring up the patient's hub area. If we click New Telephone Encounter, this will first bring up the alerts for the patient. I'm going to close out. And then this will bring up the telephone encounter. Utilizing the patient's hub is more efficient because it does input the patient's information in for you because you utilize that patient's hub information. As you can see, it inputted the patient information. Now, as we can see, the patient's demographics have not fully been inputted because the provider and pharmacy are missing. But on a regular basis, the provider and pharmacy are pre-populated for you if those fields have been filled out in the patient demographics area. As you see in the top, the answer by area is pre-populated as well as the date and the time. And the patient's name and information have been pre-populated as you see here. Usually the provider information is pre-populated, but as I said before, as we see, this has not been filled out in the patient demographics. We can either, one, choose from the drop-down to choose the provider for the patient, or number two, we can utilize the ellipsis, which is the three dots beside that area, and search for the provider. Today, we're going to choose Dr. Arno. The pharmacy, keep in mind, if a primary pharmacy is not chosen on the patient's demographic, nothing will show here. So if you would like to, one, you can choose from the drop down if there are any pharmacies in the patient's demographics, even if they are not primary, or you could choose the ellipsis and search for the proper pharmacy. Usually, if this information has been filled out in the demographics, as I said before, this will be pre-populated for you. As we see, the caller area is blank. We will need to fill this out. If this is a telephone encounter, it would be the patient I was speaking with. So for the caller, I'm going to input patient. And in the reason field, we want to make sure that we are very specific in this area so that it is easier to locate the telephone encounter from your inbox or from the provider's inbox or the inbox of the person you're sending the telephone encounter to. So, for instance, if the patient was calling in for a refill of lisinopril, that is what we would notate in the reason area. Number one, you can either click on the caret or the drop-down arrow in the reason field and choose from one of the pre-populated options. Or number two, you can click in this area and type in the reason. The more specific you are, the better. So I'm going to put refill for lisinopril. At this point, we want to leave a message for the person that we're writing this telephone encounter to. So in the message field under the message tab, we're going to write a short synopsis of what we need. As you see, I have notated need approval for refill of lisinopril. At this point, I have created the message, so I would start off by putting my notes in the message field. If this is a high priority or urgent, there is a high priority box at the top. By clicking this high priority box, it will cause the person's jelly bean to whom I'm sending this telephone encounter to turn red to alert them of a high priority telephone encounter in their inbox. At this point, I need to assign this to the person that I'm sending it to. So, if I'm sending this to Dr. Arno, I can either, one, in the Assign To area, choose from the drop-down for Dr. Arno, or I can choose the ellipsis beside the Assign To area, and I can search for that provider. And not just provider, but I can also choose other staff as well. For this, I'm going to actually choose my own name so that I can show you what it will look like. And then at this point, I will choose OK to send this to the person I have assigned it to. This is how you send a telephone encounter. In order to respond to a telephone encounter, you must pull up the telephone encounter that has been sent to you. As we discussed previously, the telephone encounter that was sent had been put on high priority. So the T jelly bean should turn up red. They do not update automatically, so I'm going to go to my refresh counts to update them faster. As you see, once I refresh my counts, my jelly bean turned red to alert me of that high priority telephone encounter. Once I click on this, it brings me to my telephone encounters inbox. The high priority telephone encounter has the red exclamation beside it to let me know this is the telephone encounter that is high priority. In order to view the telephone encounter, I will double click on this, and it brings up the telephone encounter that has been sent to me. As you see, the notes that we previously filled out are needs approval for refill of lisinopril in the message area. In order for me to respond to this, I'm going to use the action taken section. Please keep in mind that we do not want to respond to a telephone encounter in the message field or by creating a brand new telephone encounter. We always want to respond in the action taken section so that all responses are related to that one encounter. So if I am the provider and I need to respond back to my nurse, I'm going to click the button that says Add Action Taken, and this brings up my notes area. have responded with please send e-prescription for lisinopril, and I'm going to press OK. As you see here in the actions taken, it notates my name and the date and time, and then my response. This way, as you respond back and forth, it will put it in line by the date and time so that it can be in chronological order and easier to read. So once I have responded, I want to assign it back to the person who sent it to me because I'm responding to them. I can either once again, under the Assign To area, I can choose that person's name from the drop-down arrow. I can, number 2, click on the button with the 3 dots, or it's called the ellipsis area, and search for my staff member. Or, if I hit this green arrow to the side, it lets me choose the name of every person who has touched this telephone encounter. Right now it only has my name because I began the telephone encounter and I sent it to myself. But in other circumstances, it could have multiple names in this list. So I will click on the name that's available to send it back to that person. Please keep in mind, if I want someone to be able to read my response, I will not hit the addressed area because that person will not see it in their inbox because it will not be sent. So please be aware, do not hit addressed unless you are done with the telephone encounter. So at this point, since I want it to go back to the nurse, I'm going to hit OK with addressed not chosen, and that will have my response. So at this point, we have responded to a telephone encounter. Next, we're going to go over how to refill a prescription via telephone encounter. In order to refill a prescription, we're going to use the patient lookup button. If we click on the patient lookup button, or once again, it could be called Sherlock Holmes, we're going to type in the patient's name or date of birth, depending on how you have this set up. And once you click on the patient, their hub area will pull up. At this point, once again, we're going to click on New Telephone Encounter. And as we see, and we spoke about before, since I utilized the patient's hub, it did pre-populate the patient, the provider, and the pharmacy, as well as the facility. So I will notate once again who the caller was, the reason, and as you see in the reason field, I was very specific by putting refill for lisinopril. Now, before we refill the prescription, I do want to describe the areas below. There is a message tab which allows you to write and respond messages for the encounter. We have an RX tab which allows the user to view medication history and refill. There is a Labs and DI tab which allows you to view labs and diagnostic results. There is a Notes section which allows you to add additional notes. The Addendum section that is here allows you to add on notations to an addressed or locked telephone encounter. And we have a log history area where you can view the log of everyone who has had access and modified or even created the telephone encounter. And then you have a virtual visit tab, which is a SOAP note within the telephone encounter. In this instance, we're going to utilize the RX tab because we are refilling a prescription. In this area, you will see it does have comments, name, strength, formulation, take, route, frequency, duration, etc., just as it would in a full progress note when you're ordering medication. To the right, you will see a right chart panel as you would on a regular progress note. In the overview area of your right chart panel, there is a medication list, as we see. As we see here, lisinopril is not listed, so actually we're going to refill Lipitor. So I'm actually going to change my reason for this instance to refill for Lipitor because we are going to utilize that. In this right chart panel, there's C for continue, R for refill, and S for stop. If we want to refill this, we're going to click on the R. Once we click on the R, it inputs it into our RX tab. As we see here, it shows us the name, the strength, the formulation, the take, route, and frequency. Once I have verified that this information is correct, in the comments section, if we click in this section, we will click on Start, then click Close, and it will put Start in our comments section. At this point, we can click Send RX. Since this is our training environment, it's going to give me an error. But if we are e-prescribing, it would bring up the e-prescribe screen where we could verify the pharmacy and also leave notes for the pharmacist if necessary. If this needs to be printed, we can choose Print Script. And this would bring up our printer option so that we could print the script for the patient. At this point, since I'm refilling the prescription, I have added this to my RX. I have sent this with my Send RX button. I will go back to my Message tab, and under Action Taken, I will document what I have done. This documentation is necessary, so as you see, I added it under my action taken so that it could timestamp my entry. It has, once again, my name, the date, and the time, and my documentation. At this point, I do not need to send it to anyone else, so I will address this telephone encounter in order to lock it, and I will press OK. This has locked my telephone encounter. In order to add notations to a locked telephone encounter, I'm going to refresh my account so that it will add it to my address tab. And to show you how to add a notation, I'm going to click on one of the locked telephone encounters, which we can know because the indication of a locked telephone encounter is on the left and has a picture of a padlock. If I double click on it, as you see, it says addressed, and it grays out everything, but it will allow me to add an addendum. If I click on the addendum tab, now the addendum tab is not grayed out. I can press the add button and place notations. Once I do so, as you see here, it adds an indication beside addendum to let us know that a note had been added, and we can view that there under the Addendum tab. This is how you would add to an addressed or locked telephone encounter. Next, we will be going over how to manage your telephone encounters. In order to manage your telephone encounters, you would press on the number beside your T, and this would be your T jelly bean. This will bring you to your inbox. As you see above, you can filter in different areas. You can filter by provider by using the drop-down arrow, or you can choose the ellipsis beside it to search for a particular provider. You can change who to view the telephone encounters to whoever they are assigned to by, once again, you can choose the drop-down arrow, or you can choose the ellipsis, or you can search by facility. The same with the drop-down arrow and the ellipsis. Today, we're going to view my own, and in here, it will show you your telephone encounters, and if you want to just address them, you can double click on one. You would choose addressed, and you would press after notating what action you took. And then you would press OK. At this point, it removed it from my inbox because I addressed the telephone encounter. Also, if I would like to delete a telephone encounter, I can check mark the telephone encounter, and I can press the delete button here. I can even reassign the telephone encounter with the option to the right of the delete button, which says reassign to. Now for the instance where you would want to view another person's T jelly bean, under the assign to area, you can, once again, you can use your drop down arrow to search for the person, or you can utilize your ellipsis and search for the person you're looking for. Today, I'm going to utilize Amanda, who is one of my fellow eCW trainers. And now I can see her T jelly bean. If I want to reassign these, I check mark the ones that I want to reassign. I click on reassign to. I search for myself. I'll click on my name and then OK, and it moves those to my jelly bean and out of Amanda's jelly bean. So if I go back to my own jelly bean, those have been added to my inbox. Now we have gone over how to manage your telephone encounters. So after creating and responding to telephone encounters, refilling prescriptions via telephone encounter, adding notations to address telephone encounters, and managing those telephone encounters, if you have any further questions, please email us at ecwquestions@palmettoprimarycare.com. This concludes the telephone encounters tutorial. Thank you very much.